Good morning, everyone. Today we would talk about piano and drums. This is a poem by Gabriel Okara. I have talked a little bit about Gabriel Okara in my other video of another poem, Once Upon a Time. So this is a different poem by Gabriel Okara. Although both these poems discuss similar themes. So this poem is piano and drums. Here, piano is representative of Western culture and drums is representative of um, the African culture. He is particularly talking about Nigeria. He is a Nigerian poet, but whatever he says about Nigerian culture does definitely apply to Africa in general. Okay, so and this is true for Gabriel Okara's other poems, other stories that he writes. He writes of similar themes of westernization, of the nativity, and African culture. So let's begin reading this poem. He says, when at break of day, at a riverside, I hear the jungle drums telegraphing the mystic rhythm, urgent, raw, like bleeding fish, speaking of primal youth and beginning. I see the panther ready to pounce, the leopard snarling about to leap, and the hunters crouch with spears poised. Now, the poem talks about a natural setting where he hears the sounds of a drum. Here, the drum is symbolic of African culture and folklore, and the musical forms are known to people. These are fresh, and it brings out passion, it brings out some hidden emotions in the people who hear them. And one can instantly be drawn into these rhythms of the drum. He also uses very passionate imagery like the panther, like the leopard, right, and like the hunters. So this is an image of passion, right? The panther, which is going to pounce at someone, is creating a very strange atmosphere, but at the same time, it's creating an atmosphere that will set you to motion. It has some potential energy. It would actually make you eventually become very enthusiastic. Okay, so this music uh, gives you this a feeling of energy, right? And that's the feeling that mostly drums bring. If you know, drums of any culture have this kind of a vibration about them which make people really enthusiastic. They want to dance, right? And then he says, and my blood ripples, turns torrent, topples the years at once. I am in my mother's laps, a suckling. At once I am walking simple paths with no innovations, rugged, fashioned with the naked warmth of hurrying feet and groping hearts, in green leaves and wild flowers pulsing. Now he says that you see this poem does not have a fixed rhythm, and this is true for the earlier poem Once Upon a Time also. He's using free verse, and that also suits the tenor of the poem. He's talking about a passion, a free passion, and he's using the free verse. Um, and this is the effect that the music of drums has on the poet. He feels impassioned by the music. He instantly goes back to his childhood. The music is so fresh that it brings back all his energies from the youth. And all these feelings of memories take him back to his innate self, where he was a very young infant. And yet, this rhythm is extremely very simple. It is a path with no innovations. It also brings in warmth and green leaves. So he builds an image of the natural African setting, natural Nigerian setting. And we can imagine that it's a wild setting also. He talks about wild animals also. Now, the first part of the poem talks about a natural rhythm of the drums. This is representative of native cultures of Africa, and the poet must be talking about Nigeria in particular, as I said, but we could say this for the whole continent. That before the presence of the Western counterpart, before the invasion by the West, and before colonization, this land was very pristine. The rhythm of the land was also very pure, and it actually resonated with the people who were living there. However, as one reaches a later time, the colonial era, as we call it, everything changes. Everything changes from good to a bad time. Okay, so he says, um, when I hear the piano, then I hear a wailing piano solo Speaking of complex ways in teal furrowed concerto of faraway lands and new horizons with coaxing diminuendo, counterpoint, crescendo, but lost in the labyrinth of its complexities, it ends in the middle of a phrase at a dagger point. So it says that, when you hear the wailing piano, what do we mean by a wailing piano? It is crying, does not have the same passion of the drum, right? And we could resonate with the actual sound of the piano. The piano is actually, it is lighter music. It is not meant for people to get completely enthusiastic about, right? So he associates the sound of crying, the sound of a serious wailing with the piano. And it talks about, a time which is far away, right, of horizons, of new horizons, of a new time. It is not immediate. The drums were immediate. It was talking about things which were more close to the people who would hear it. But now it's talking about farther lands, and it stops. It reaches at a crescendo. It is reaching at a certain time, and then it's just stopping. It does not give you a sense of a final enthusiasm. It does not give you that cathartic feeling that a drum would give. So and immediately we see that the language also has become very complex. It's strangely unfriendly and inaccessible, and he uses words like diminuendo, crescendo, uh, uh, labyrinth, which have connotation with something inaccessible, something which is contrived, which is artificial, and which is forced. And the piano is wailing, it is crying, and the concerto is an elite form of music, right? The consort is an elite form of music. It requires an entire orchestra. It is very different from the minimalism of the drummer. And even though the music seems to have come from a more complex time, it is still meaningless. It is inundating, right? It does not give you that cathartic feeling, that feeling of, okay, jumping over and dancing, which you would get from a drum. Okay, and that's the basic difference he highlights between the current westernized culture and the innate, the older African culture. And he says, I lost in the morning mist of an age at a riverside, keep wandering in the mystic rhythm of jungle drums and the concerto. So the mystic rhythm is now lost. As mentioned before, this is symbolic of a lost culture, lost art forms, and the lost pleasure that native people would derive from indigenous forms of music, which is forever more powerful and much more than the Western forms of music, which have completely overshadowed everything else. So this is, in short, the poem Piano and Drums by Gabriel Okara. Tune into my channel for more such videos. Thank you.